and who can they help?
Well, it's a great question. They can help everyone, really. And their flower essences are part of that vibrational umbrella, if you like, which you have gem elixirs, homeopathics, flower essences. My background as a naturopath, I've been practicing 40 years. I'm also as a homeopath. And one of the main differences is there's no aggravations with flower essences and the bush essences, as opposed to, say, homeopathy, where you can dilute to much greater dilutions, but you can also run the risk of having aggravations, or you take the right remedy for too long, you can have side effects, where it's pretty safe and harmless. So the beauty is you can have parents who just want to use the essences on their children, or you can have practitioners in whatever modality, all being able to use the remedies at an equal level. And, I think the beauty is, when you said, who do they work for? Because they're basically working on emotional states. So you might have a parent and their child hasn't been invited to the birthday party all the other friends have. So, they're feeling really rejected, their self-esteem's down. You don't need, a 4-year naturopathic degree to recognize that, or maybe, the pet dog has died and there's a lot of sadness. So, you can prescribe remedies on those emotional states, but if you're a practitioner, you can go in at a deeper level, because the premise is our physical symptoms stem from emotional and spiritual imbalances. So, in Chinese medicine, for example, if you have a lot of fear, it'll affect kidneys, or if you're really angry, it'll affect your liver. So when you're getting symptoms, it's a bit of an indicator, okay, what's the emotional state out of balance? And then you can go in and treat both the liver with the essences, but also the emotional state.
So it's perfectly safe for people to self-prescribe for their emotional needs. But if you then consult a practitioner, you're going to get in on a deeper level. Is that right?
Yeah, I think they've got greater diagnostic skills to sort of go and delve deeper down and what have you, to try and make some of the connections. But certainly self-prescribing is fine and totally safe.
That's great. One of the topics that comes up a great deal with Kindred Spirit readers, and something that we cover a great deal, is anxiety and depression. It seems to be at the forefront of people's minds at the moment. How can Australian bush flower essences help in these regards?
Okay, so if we looked at depression, there's about 5 different types. We've just had the summer solstice, longest day of the year, plenty of sunlight, so people aren't going to be getting that seasonal affect disorder. But there's one of our remedies works on the pineal, and I'm from Australia, and we've just had the shortest day of the year. So when there's not a lot of light, the pineal regulates how much there is and affects our body clock. So if you're in the far northern reaches of the UK, then certainly in those long winters, not a lot of sunlight, you can feel a bit down. So there's, the bush iris is a great remedy for regulating pineal and the one's body clock. Okay. You've also got postnatal depression, which, as opposed to postnatal blues, which is, 50% of women might get a bit teary from about day 4, day 14 after birth. But we have a combination called the woman essence, and it has based around a remedy called the she oak. And there's a thing in herbal medicine and flower essences called the doctrine of signatures, where the shape and the colour of the plant, where it grows, are clues as to the healing qualities. And the she oak, the seed is exactly the same size as the ovary, has the same markings on it.
Wow.
And so it regulates the ovaries. And we also have another remedy in there, which is working on the thalamus, and between that and the ovaries, you're regulating the whole hormonal cycle for the female. So certainly with a lot of hormonal changes with the pregnancy going to the birth, that's a really good one to help with that. And one of the other factors can be a lack of bonding between the mother feeling it to the child. Now, especially this is very common if, for whatever reason, the baby's not put on the breast in that first 6 hours. So especially for first-time mums, they can, high expectations. Maybe the baby had a health problem, or taken away, not put on the breast in that first 6 hours. So the mother might feel difficulty in establishing that bonding. And it doesn't sound much, 6 hours, but it can take literally decades, sometimes, that bond to be reestablished, compared to maybe a mother who's had another child which did go on the breast. So that remedy, bottle brush, which you do see growing now around in England, native to Australia, is really good for that bond between the mother and the child. So that can help as well. So,
and so is that also a good one for mothers who, for whatever reason, can't breastfeed or don't want to breastfeed and are bottle feeding? Would that be an option for them as
absolutely,
well?
yeah, it will just help with that bonding going on as well. And also because of oxytocin being released in breastfeeding, it's called the love drug. So, a mum's besotted by her baby when she's breastfeeding, and really the child needs that total unconditional love. It's very important. And if they don't get that, and it's usually from the mum because she's got that close proximity to the child, and then they can crave attention later in their life. Now, the positive could be someone who's, rock star in front of 50,000 fans, but it could be someone who just likes having drama in their life, drama at school, drama in their workplace, and being the center of that. So getting attention, even though it's not positive attention, it's attention for them. So, the bottle brush is a good one.
Right.
And then, of course, we have, like we talked to postnatal depression, there's postnatal psychosis, or with other depression when someone can get that point of suicidal. And, we're seeing a trend in Western countries that younger women are suiciding more than what they used to in the past. I mean, it's still probably 4-to-1 men over women, but if you think of anyone as in that much pain, that their best option is just to kill themselves. I mean, we could hardly even imagine how much suffering they're going through. And there's probably the most popular flower in Australia. It's called the waratah. And it was the only flowers the white settlers received from the Aborigines, because for the Aborigines, they're the highest flower. And this is a tremendous one for that black night of the soul, despair, and feeling suicidal. And the nice thing about that remedy, it's really quick. I mean, if you've got someone in that much pain and despair, then you need something that's going to work very quickly. And the waratah, just a few days, will pull people back from that brink. And, as you mentioned, the workshop, sometimes people come up to me in a workshop and say, the reason I'm here today is to thank you because I was going to kill myself and someone gave me the waratah or the emergency essence. And they've got through that black night of the soul, and then being able to go on and enjoy their life. And it's incredibly satisfying for me meeting someone who otherwise wouldn't be here today. And so,
what an essence to have.
Yeah, or getting in letters from countries I've never been to, from people saying, my son was suicidal and someone gave him the emergency essence, which has the waratah, and it saved their life. And it's it's great to help people, but when you get them actually their lives being saved, that's fantastic. And
so obviously that's brilliant for sort of these crises points in your life, these dark nights of the soul, as you say. But for somebody who suffers with general anxiety, what might you recommend for them? Something to keep them steady?
Yes, look, there's a remedy we call dog rose, and in that Doctrine of Signatures, it's like it's round-shouldered, it's stooped and held in, and like a bit shy, fearful, and that's in a combination called confid. So that we're dealing with a lot of the anxiety, and I suppose the most common form of depression is what's described as neurotic depression. And there's a diagnosis where if you're suffering from 4 of the following ones, where there's guilt, lack of appetite, no energy, poor thinking, sadness, can be suicidal as well. There's guilt. So, of those 8 different categories, their essence is very specific. I mean, a lot of people hold sadness. And there's a lovely remedy called the Sturt Desert Pea. And, probably someone listening in thinking all these names, and they can go to the website and see some images of the flowers. I mean, they're very, very beautiful. It grows in the centre of Australia on salt plains. And for the Aboriginal legends, the salt plains were formed from all the human tears falling on the ground over the centuries, making the salt plains. And that's where the Sturt Desert Pea flowers. And, we have a cycle in Australia in the desert where you get 2 years of solid rains, which usually produce a flood when they first come, and then the flowers start all coming up and growing.
Yeah.
They die out, and then by the 5th year there's a big fire, and then there's about 25 years of drought. But when you get those rains coming, it's just covered with the desert pea, and it's one of the most striking of all the flowers. It literally stops you in your track when you see it. And I think we've all gone through periods of a lot of sadness. And I think if you go to any high street, you look at people's faces, you'll see the sadness that so many people have in their eyes.
Yeah.
And so Stuart Desert Pea is a great one for that. I mean, we've got the one for guilt. A cognizance, helping for clarity of thought, because if someone is depressed, they often say, look, I've got muddled thinking. I'm just not thinking very clearly. So, we can address that. And then there's probably a trend happening in Western countries where houses are getting bigger and there's less people in them. Like I know in the UK, for example, compared to 30 years ago, there was 1 in 10 people would live as a single occupant. And now it's 30 to 40% of houses are single occupants.
Yes.
So if you don't, you can live alone and still have some people close to you, but a lot of people don't. And if you don't have that confidence to share the challenging bits of your life, all the really good ones, and celebrate that, what happens is you die younger. You die the same things, but you die younger. And there's just that loneliness. And I think a lot of people are very lonely and very isolated. And this particular flower called the tall yellow top, it's all the stamens are reaching out. And when someone's depressed, there's that withdrawing, going within. Yeah. And it's helping you to reach out and make contact and have social interaction. It's a very... and a deep acting remedy, because it's, when someone's really depressed, it's usually something that's been building up, or they've been having it for some time. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that these flowers this is traditional knowledge that has been passed down over the generations from presumably the Aboriginal peoples. Are you still discovering new flowers in Australia that can help people, or is this something that you think is covered now?
Look, when I've been doing the bush essences for 34 years now, and when I first started, I found that the basic emotional states, like as you mentioned, the anxiety, the fear, the sadness, were the essences coming through. But what I've noticed that as there's a need arising in the society, essences come down to match that need. For example, if you talk to school teachers, they're saying there's so many more children with learning problems. Like a generation ago, you might have had 1 or 2 kids struggling in the class of 30. And now teachers can say sometimes up to half of them. The children today process information very differently. And so there's essences like which we put together in the Cognos essence, which is fantastic for learning problems. And, children looking like they're going to have to repeat a whole year of school because they're not doing well. And, they start realizing, oh, wow, I can learn this, and start to.
Fantastic.
There's also, it's just on nuclear radiation. Green Cross, an offshoot of Red Cross, they look at environmental factors. And every summer they go to the Alps in Belarus, and they take the children with the highest level of nuclear radiation, because Belarus was directly downwind from Chernobyl. So they got the worst of it, and to a less extent Ukraine. So even though it's 30 years ago and these children are, like 10 or 8, it's because it's in the water system, it's in the land, they're still getting high nuclear radiation. Gosh. And they try different attempts, and these are cardiologists who can all found that a combination called electro is the most effective treatment they've ever come for clearing nuclear radiation, clearing 43% in 2 weeks. So it's like they're really working very much. And the same for electromagnetic radiation. For good reasons, telecom country, are disguising masts for mobile phone mast towers as trees and other things, because there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation coming from. So we're just being saturated. So there's essences dealing with that. So I'm sure as we go on, if something arises as a need, then I'm sure essence flowers will tend to come down to meet that need.
That's fascinating. So I know that you're based in Australia, obviously, and you have been doing workshops and talks. But when can we expect to see you again in the UK? And if not, are there things online that our UK readers can book onto?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of webinars online, so that's a great one. So, and I'll be back next May running workshops, and certainly, we do have people from England, turning up to other countries where we run them. And
I'm
once
sure.
a year, we make an essence as a part of a 3-day workshop in Australia in our spring, when probably half of the bush flowers are out in flower. So, if anyone's interested, they want a holiday and come over for that. But yeah, and there's also, even if you're not wanting to do a workshop, you can go online and there's videos of what the flowers look like, the environments where they're growing, and I'm talking about some of their qualities, so they can find out a little bit of information that way.
That's
and
fabulous.
books are out by in the UK as well. Yeah.
That's great. What's the latest book then, Ian?
The latest book is Happy Healthy Kids, so dealing with all the problems from conception right through to about age 7 for children. Fantastic. And then we're got an animal healing book, and my first 2 books, Australian Bushflower Essences and Bushflower Healing, are available, and Fintorn Press is one of the publishers for that too.
That's wonderful. So Ian, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and good luck with the rest of the tour.
Oh, and thanks very much for the opportunity to chat with you, Gillian. Thank you.
Thanks.